In the vast expanse of eastern Washington state, where sprawling forests and desolate highways stretch as far as the eye can see, whispers of a shadowy figure haunted the collective consciousness of the region for nearly 2 decades. From 1973 to 1992, a string of unsolved disappearances and grisly murders sent shockwaves through the communities nestled among the rolling hills and remote towns. It began innocuously enough, with the vanishing of a young woman named Emily Johnson in the summer of 1973. Emily, a bright-eyed college student from Spokane, had been hitchhiking along Highway 395, hoping to catch a ride back home after visiting friends in Colville. But as the sun dipped below the horizon and darkness enveloped the landscape, Emily never arrived. Her disappearance was the first of many in a series of chilling events that would come to define the era. Over the years that followed, more young women vanished without a trace, their families left to grapple with the agonizing uncertainty of their fates. Despite the efforts of law enforcement agencies and community members alike, the elusive killer seemed to operate with impunity, striking fear into the hearts of those who called eastern Washington home. Speculation ran rampant, theories ranging from a lone psychopath to an organized network of criminals lurking in the shadows. As the body count rose, the investigation grew increasingly desperate. But clues were scarce, and the killer remained one step ahead, leaving nothing but broken families and shattered communities in their wake. In the small town of Colville, nestled among the pine-covered hills, Detective Mark Thompson found himself at the center of the investigation. A seasoned investigator with a keen eye for detail, Mark had dedicated his life to seeking justice for the victims and closure for their loved ones. With each passing year, the weight of the unsolved cases bore down on Mark like a heavy burden, driving him to delve deeper into the darkest corners of the human psyche in search of answers. But as the years stretched into decades, hope began to fade, and the specter of the unidentified killer loomed larger than ever. Then, in the summer of 1992, a breakthrough came in the form of a chilling discovery. A hiker stumbled upon a shallow grave deep in the woods outside of Colville, and within it lay the remains of several of the missing women, their bodies concealed beneath a blanket of fallen leaves and pine needles. For Mark Thompson and his team, it was a bittersweet moment. On one hand, the discovery brought a sense of closure to the families of the victims, finally laying to rest the uncertainty that had plagued them for so long. But on the other hand, it confirmed their worst fears, that a serial killer had been operating in their midst for nearly 2 decades, preying on the innocent with impunity. As the investigation into the newly discovered crime scene unfolded, a picture began to emerge of a meticulous and methodical killer, one who had carefully covered their tracks and evaded capture for years. But despite their best efforts, the identity of the perpetrator remained elusive, a ghostly figure lurking just beyond reach. In the years that followed, the case of the Eastern Washington serial killer would become the stuff of legend, a cautionary tale whispered around campfires and recounted in hushed tones. And though the killer themselves may have faded into obscurity, their legacy lived on in the hearts and minds of those who had been touched by their reign of terror. For Detective Mark Thompson, the case would never truly be closed. As he retired from the force and settled into a quiet life in Colville, he remained haunted by the faces of the victims he had sworn to protect. But amidst the darkness, he found solace in the knowledge that their voices had finally been heard, their stories told, and their memory honored. And so, as the sun set over the rolling hills of eastern Washington, casting long shadows across the landscape, Mark Thompson vowed to never forget the victims of the unidentified serial killer, to keep their memory alive and their legacy alive in the hearts of those who had loved them. And though the killer may have escaped justice in this life, Mark held on to the hope that one day they would be brought to account for their crimes, and the shadows that had haunted the region for so long would finally be dispelled.